My biggest New Year's resolution was to be more positive, optimistic, and to try and see the best in people, but then Disney had to drop the Acolyte on us. The online discourse has been absolutely insane for this. Like, you can't go on Twitter without people arguing about whether you hate women or not, and that is the reason you love or hate the show. And I've said this multiple times, but if you think this is going to be another video of a guy that's just complaining that Star Wars has a woman in the lead role, this is not the channel for you, because I think people are either too soft on this show and don't want to piss off certain creators or companies, and then there are other people who only want to talk politics on a movie channel. And I'm over here wanting to actually dissect what Disney and Lucasfilm is doing wrong, because the people that loved Star Wars growing up either had to be quiet about it or get bullied for liking it in public because it's such a nerdy thing to be into. And we nerds don't need that much. We just need some good Star Wars content, because if you're gonna get bullied, you might as well get bullied over a good show. And it should be hard to make something this bad. I could make thousands of dollars if all I did was make videos about how Disney is so woke they keep putting women in my favorite movie. But I'm not that big of a loser, and I'd rather wait and write a review after seeing the complete story of season 1 rather than do it episode by episode. So if you're looking for a video of a guy shitting on Star Wars because the brand has been getting dragged through the mud for almost a decade by some of the most incompetent teams I have ever seen assembled, then yeah, this channel might be for you, because the Acolyte blows! And I should have known this was going to happen, but I was one of the few that held out hope for this one for such a long time, because when it was announced at the Disney Investor Day in 2020, I was intrigued by this sentence right here.
The Acolyte is a mystery thriller that will take us into a galaxy of shadowy secrets and emerging dark side powers in the final days of the High Republic era.
I know hindsight is 2020, but I was so tired of getting spin-off shows for every character in this universe, so to get something fully original, pretty disconnected from the main canon story with a Sith Lord and Apprentice as the protagonists of the show, from somebody that already had an Emmy for their television work, I was like, this is the one I'm putting my money on right here. And thank God I broke the gambling addiction curse of my family, because if I actually put money on that statement, I would be setting up a tent in Venice Beach right now. And I obviously have gotten even more skeptical since that Investors Day 4 years ago, because so many of those shows have stunk. And I already have another video on my channel breaking down everything Disney has done wrong with Star Wars since they bought the IP, but just in case you need to be caught up to speed, I don't love any of these shows. And I still think Book of Boba Fett is worse than this.
Like a panther. Yes.
But this show, man, it really does feel like the nail in the coffin for me. Like, until Kathleen and everybody else over in that department is out of there and they bring in somebody like Nolan or Denis to tackle an Old Republic trilogy or something, I have absolutely zero faith in anything that these people are making. And today we're gonna break down everything wrong with the Acolyte and why it's made so many people like me angry. But before we hop into that, you know what's more disappointing than Disney Star Wars? Getting 7 spam calls a day about how I won the YouTuber of the Year award. And this happens because when companies like Ticketmaster get hacked and the data of 560 million users becomes available on the dark web, all of a sudden your name, home address, email address, phone number, credit card data, all of it is out there for the galaxy to know. And now these spammers know more about me than my mom, all because I got my girlfriend Taylor Swift tickets. And these big companies aren't exactly helpful at getting the information taken off of the internet, which is why I've been using Aura, the sponsor of today's video. Aura is always on, and it alerts me when my data has been part of a data breach or leaked on the dark web, and within seconds of that alert, Aura is already stopping that information from falling into the wrong hands. This also applies to my credit card and bank accounts, so if there's any suspicious larger payments, Aura makes sure to let me know immediately. And my personal favorite part of using their service is the noticeable amount of spam that I no longer get. Like, my phone went from 20 calls a day to nobody hitting me up, which is a great day for me. It's super easy to set up, and I also get things like a VPN, antivirus, a password manager, identity theft insurance, and even though I don't have kids yet, you do get some parental controls, all in one app at one affordable price. And like I said, Aura is always on, doing the hard work of keeping me safe so I can just focus on making these videos with as much peace of mind as I can get before I get screamed at in the comments section. I value my privacy and I value yours too, so you can go to aura.com/ChaseCesarian to start your 2-week free trial, which is also just one click away if you look in the description of this video. It's been a very eye-opening experience for me, and I hope you get the same peace of mind from using their service that I did. So thank you again to Aura for sponsoring this video, and now let's get back to why the Acolyte ruined my summer. And one last disclaimer, this video is going to have spoilers for the entire first season, so if you want to check out the show for yourself and come up with your own opinion, feel free to add this to your watch later and come back after that. But I gotta be honest, you're not missing much, so you might as well stick around. The Acolyte is so weird to talk about because it does pretty much everything wrong in each department, but the levels to how bad things can get drastically varies depending on the situation. Like, for example, on paper, I don't hate the idea of this show. Like, obviously, I think the better on paper story would have been following a Sith Lord and Apprentice from the very first episode, but to have a Star Wars show where there are these two twins with the Force, but they call it the Thread for whatever reason, and they get separated early on and they end up fighting for different sides, sure, that could have been cool. But they do this 1 foot in, 1 foot out strategy with everything. Like, Osha was almost a Jedi and Mae was kind of a Sith, and then Mae will be like, I hate the Jedi, I want to kill them all, they killed my whole family. And then out of nowhere she'll just go, actually, you know what, I'm gonna turn myself into the Jedi and tell them about my evil master because that sounds like a good thing to do. And then right after that she just tries to kill the Jedi again. Like, make it make sense, bro. It doesn't make sense. And they never really do anything interesting with the whole twin concept. Like, in less than 2 episodes, everybody just believes Osha's story, but I thought there was a perfect opportunity to have her put on trial, get some more insight into this version of the Jedi Council, and after all of that, then there would be a good time to reveal that she is telling the truth since her sister killed another Jedi while all of this was happening. And it could have given us even more build up to Osha's eventual turn to the dark side, since it could show the level of distrust the Jedi and her have for each other. But again, this show doesn't want to develop anything at all. One of the reasons I actually liked episode 5 the most was because it killed off half of the bad actors in less than 3 minutes. But the thing that makes it even worse in hindsight is that it feels like the characters in that episode are completely different than the ones we get in the following episodes. Like, remember Thor's arc in the last 2 Avengers movies where he's dealing with the guilt of not killing Thanos before he obliterated half of the universe? So there's a whole storyline of him going through depression and trying to find himself again. That was pretty interesting. And then Taika Waititi came in to say, fuck all that, and made him the goofiest he ever was in Thor 4. And that's what the Acolyte feels like in every episode. Osha goes from, oh my god, this guy's a monster and he killed my friends, to wait a second, he's kind of sexy. And then you have the Stranger, who goes from being genuinely interesting, like the switch up from his 2 voices on the spot, the way he can brutally just mow down Jedi, and he actually feels like a real threat to this group of dweebs that are supposed to be Jedi. But then 1 episode later, he's acting like a plank of wood from a CW show, and it just never feels like there's any consistency in anything going on. And I don't think it's these actors' fault, except sometimes it actually is. Like, I don't get joy out of making fun of kids acting, but this kid, bro, the director is a pretty talented guy, and he gave her the worst takes I've ever seen in a Star Wars project. And I know this franchise has dealt with some pretty bad delivery over the years, but my god.
I want to have my own things. Why? Because I want to do everything together all the time.
But I think a lot of the time, it's just these actors dealing with absolutely atrocious dialogue. Like, I think Manny Jacinto is good casting for the character, but the lines he is given in episode 6, along with not getting any better takes of those deliveries, it just feels like a fuck up on everybody's part besides him. And maybe I am completely wrong on that. Maybe he's a huge pain in the ass on set and this was the best he could do, but from observing the whole show from the outside looking in, it seems like his acting abilities and character are just placed in a show that doesn't deserve his talent. Like, when I heard the log line for the show, this kind of character is what I had in mind for The Apprentice. And since they already teased that this is how Plagueis is going to get introduced into the live action stuff, the first few episodes could have been him leaving the Order and going off to be a lone wolf, and then maybe Plagueis could have shown up like halfway through the first season, but nah. Now we have these two fucking off screen and a creep in a cave that's just watching them. And if we're staying on that same trajectory, his first line will probably be some dumb shit like, get me some Jawa juice, and then give a stupid ass laugh right after. But in terms of other characters, you have Soul, an interesting guy on paper, paper. But again, you see the trend with my critiques right here. We've heard over and over that the actor loves Qui-Gon Jinn, and this character is supposed to be like Qui-Gon Jinn, and he pretty much is Qui-Gon Jinn if Qui-Gon Jinn accidentally killed somebody. And I've seen a lot of people say a Jedi would never kill an innocent person. But in this guy and the show's defense, which I'm not gonna do a lot of in this video, if I saw something do this right in front of me, then yeah, my uncultured ass would have probably taken my lightsaber out to stab it too. And even though this show makes it seem like the entire Jedi Order is corrupt from the get-go, I think the idea of having one guy mess up and actually feel guilty about it his entire life and having his other Jedi friends help cover it up isn't the worst idea, especially if the original idea of the show was to have the Sith in the protagonist role, because then you need to do something to make a Jedi not look great. But the problems I have with the character come into play when you have a guy that is supposed to be super powerful and he gets duped into not sensing his old apprentice. And at first I thought maybe he can't sense her since they are the same person by the end of the show. But then you have Basil the Badger who's been sensing they're different people the whole time. So it doesn't make sense. And in hindsight, it looks even worse when this Jedi can feel her old apprentice on the other side of the planet and this guy can't figure it out when they're in the same room. And then you have Lee Jung Jae. And even though most people on YouTube have already talked about this, the guy learned English to get the part. I mean, that's awesome. And the fact that he learned it in like 8 months is more impressive than anything the writing team did in double that time. And some of his line delivery is damn good. And then other times it's hilariously bad. And I wish the guy had gotten 1 or 2 more English roles with a few more years of experience under his belt before stepping into a role like this. But I guess if you're gonna start somewhere, you might as well do it on the Star Wars show that has nothing else to lose, because it feels like homework in film school for the rest of the team anyway. It just feels like a lineup of potentially interesting characters without any good character development for any of them. And the whole theme of the season seems to be there are no good guys and bad guys in this universe. But the problem is Star Wars has always been good guys versus bad guys. It's literally called the light side and the dark side. They don't have a whole lot of room for gray around here. And I am pro getting creative and exploring the lore of something and finding interesting ways to introduce certain ideas. Things would get too stale if it was just really stoic good guy versus Satan with a double lightsaber. But if you're going to make a morally complicated set of characters, they all have to be interesting. You want to know why House of the Dragon is so popular? It's because almost everybody in that show is morally complicated. Pretty much nobody is fully good or fully evil. They all have different aspects to root for and root against. Somebody like Aemon is a great villain, but he wasn't great from the get-go. You needed his harder childhood where he seemed like he could be the good guy that you root for to get that payoff later on. And the backstory that the Acolyte attempts to give you for anybody is just so bland. And half of it is just repeated footage from an earlier episode. You can't make it up. There's just a fundamental mishandling on everything that makes a show interesting. And it's not entirely on the creative team either. The biggest problem with every Disney Plus show is that most of them don't feel like shows. They feel like drawn out movies with breaks in between each segment. And instead of the standard 60-minute episodes that HBO gives you to tell a full, satisfying story within each season, Disney gives you episodes that last maybe 30 minutes on a good week, with 10 minutes of credits and recaps to make you feel like you're getting your money's worth, which is another thing that makes the show unbearable. Because when I was watching episode 4 and it cut to black, I thought, that felt a little unnatural, especially when episode 5 picks up right where it leaves off, and the episodes are called Day and Night. And look, Disney, we're not asking for much here, but is ChatGPT coming up with these episode names? It's crazy. Like Lost/Found, you can't come up with anything better than that. You have all the money in the world, and your best episode title is Lost/Found. But episode 5 is literally just an action scene, because the writers have come out on Twitter and stated that episode 4 and 5 were meant to be one episode for quote reasons. You want to know what the reason is? So Disney can charge you as long as possible before you cancel your subscription. But don't they realize if you just delivered good shows to people, less of them would end up canceling anyway? Like, could you imagine if you were watching House of the Dragon this season and as soon as this clip started, the show cut to black? people would be pissed, and not in a, oh, I can't wait for the next week kind of way, more in a, are they actually being serious kind of way. And then you have the finale, which tries really hard to make you want season 2 right now. But the problem is nobody wants season 2 if the storytelling is going to be just as bad as season 1. I know people hate on Ahsoka, and it's far from the best show ever, but at least season 1 of that show gave us something that felt like a real first season of a show. There was setup early on in the season, and characters like Thrawn weren't just shown in a cave, and we actually got to see him in action for a little bit, and it left the door open for an interesting season 2. But this finale doesn't feel like a season finale. It feels like the halfway point of the first season. And I could see somebody disagreeing with that point, but I just felt like we weren't given enough here for me to want a season 2. And dropping Darth Plagueis and Yoda in there for 5 seconds each doesn't give me enough of a reason to want a second season with these sisters. I would just much rather watch a show with these two because it would just be way more interesting. You don't need the twins for all this stuff. And not only is there a fundamental misunderstanding of what makes a good TV show, there's also a fundamental misunderstanding of what makes a good Star Wars story. And look, I've been saying for years now that the lightsaber fights haven't been that cool since Disney took over, and to the stunt team's credit here, the action in this show was awesome. It's a huge step up from everything else Disney has put out, and I think they are the only crew from this entire situation that shouldn't be replaced on future projects. But cool lightsaber fights and transitions can only get you so far, because as soon as anybody opens their mouth or breaks out into song, I mean, I get embarrassed for George Lucas. I don't care if you want to put a coven of witches in Star Wars. They've done that kind of stuff before, but to have them break out into a goofy song is just dumb. And then to have Victoria Monet play in the credits of an episode instead of some regular Star Wars music is just bizarre. And I can't play the song or else the video is going to get flagged for copyright, but just imagine you're watching Lord of the Rings and all of a sudden an Ariana Grande song comes on in the credits. It just doesn't fit, no matter how hard you try. And when it comes to characters, aren't Jedi Knights and Sith Lords supposed to feel like warriors? Like, these two factions are literally at war, and you're telling me dweebs like this are supposed to go into battle? You had people like Sam Jackson and Darth Maul getting into duels back in the day, and you think this guy stands a chance in a fight like that? And at first I was like, maybe the Sith aren't supposed to be this evil yet. Maybe these two are just kind of lone wolves who don't feel like they fit in with the Jedi, and Plagueis is going to force these kids to embrace the dark side even more. But then I remember this guy literally killed her friend, a kid. I know I brought this point up twice now, but make it make sense. And I think that kind of sums up why this show and so many of the other Disney Star Wars projects aren't clicking with everybody. Disney thinks they can treat the brand just like Marvel, where all you do is make a basic ass story, tease an iconic character that will show up later, and then underdeliver. But then you tease another iconic character, make another underwhelming season, rinse and repeat, and for some reason they think this is a strategy to keep pursuing. I don't think it's unfair to say that this show has turned a lot of people off of Star Wars for good. And if you like the show, I'm happy for you. I really am. And yes, there's a lot of people who hate on the show for the wrong reasons, and I think those people are just as bad as the people who claim anybody that hates the Acolyte is sexist. But I think if this show had mostly the same exact cast with better takes of each performance, the same exact outline of the plot, but each episode had a lot more meaty story to it, and then another half of the season that explored more of that dark side that was promised from the pitch, I think the amount of negativity spreading about this show would be reduced by like 90%. When you start making good shit again, the work will speak for itself and people will stop complaining. And for anybody at Disney or Lucasfilm that is aware of their current situation and is looking for inspiration, all you gotta do is catch up with the best show on TV right now. Because if House of the Dragon has taught us anything, it's that you can turn anybody back into a fan when you give them projects of the same quality of the thing that made them a fan in the first place. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you as always. This is all of my social media right here, but Letterboxd is the only one I actually care about, because if you want to hear my movie opinions on anything I'm not talking about on here, you can just follow them there. If you made it this far, be sure to like the video. I know it takes like 0.2 seconds. I know you're sick of hearing people talk about it, but it really does help me out more than you could possibly imagine. So if you do that, thank you so much. And if you really liked my opinions, be sure to subscribe, because we have a ton of content coming out here. I don't just talk about the bigger stuff like Star Wars and Marvel. I talk about indie movies, horror movies, whatever is in the universe of movies and TVs that I feel like talking about. So if you're into Marvel and Star Wars stuff, there will be some there. Like we have Deadpool and Wolverine coming out next week. week, but if you're more into that indie movie scene too and want some good movie recommendations, I'm your guy. But most importantly, out of everything, comment down below, what do you think doesn't work about this movie? Don't do all the woke, anti-woke, women shit in the comments. It's just a waste of time. There are better things in this world to talk about. Like, why are the twins so boring as characters? Like, come on. Do you think if they replace the entire creative team for season 2, it could be redeemable? I have no idea at this point. I just don't think anybody actually cares about the twin stuff, but I could be wrong. And if I am, I would love to hear your case in the comment section. I know Star Wars people are the most uncivil on the internet, but I would still like to hear your case. And if you like this video and want to see more from me, I did mention this Star Wars video earlier on in the video, so I kind of break down everything I don't like about Star Wars there. So I bring up some points that I didn't bring up in this one, and if you like that video and check it out, I really appreciate you. And I appreciate anybody that made it to this point in the video. So this is Chase. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I hope you have an awesome day. Thanks.